Let's talk pay for play. It is a loaded term, and in this case, I'm not referring to what Jamie Lee Ross facilitates now that he's no longer a politician. I'm talking about the friendly term for bribing governments with large sums of money, or gifts of free seafood dinners, and it is illegal. That legality stems from two really specific laws, the Crimes Act and the Secret Commissions Act, and it's regulated in the Electoral Act. Basically, it is against the law to enter into any kind of agreement or understanding that disguises donations as a way to gain influence from political parties. And this story about the racing industry, it reads like a textbook case of it happening. You see, when it comes to New Zealand First donors, there's one group that makes up over 60% of donations that the parties received this year. You know, the party that wants to police your pants and dribble on about English as an official language, and they're getting their money from the racing industry. In fact, this leaked document that this Radio New Zealand story is about was from a group chaired by Sir Peter Vela, who donated $150,000 to New Zealand First. And Sistema founder Sir Brendan Lindsay, also on the committee that wrote the report, also donated $100,000 to the party. And then there was another racing industry donation of about $50,000 that came in. In fact, a leaked letter that was part of the report says that it was commissioned by Winston after meeting with the donors in February, which they now deny and claim that it was just a mix-up. It's so weird how that happened. What a mystery that letter would appear in the files somewhere. So we're being asked to believe that it's coincidental that the people making these recommendations on this committee that would give the racing industry massive tax breaks also donated to the man that is odds-on favourite to be above the Prime Minister in preferred Prime Minister stakes at the next opinion polls. And he's known to be very close to the racing industry and has been for years and years, and I think he was there when Ben-Hur raced chariots. It's been a while. The report also claims that the horse racing industry is on track to become a withering husk of itself, a cottage industry completely unsustainable as people turn away from racing and find online casinos and crypto to gamble with instead. But it doesn't mention that the number of active bettors that TAB has listed is actually up 11,000 on last year, or that their global partners are seeing double-digit growth hitting record turnover. So this isn't so much a death spiral as it is an entitlement loop. And we all know how the Prime Minister loves his entitlements that he's entitled to. And this is only the most obvious of those large sum donors that the coalition has. GMP Environmental Limited, or Greymouth Petroleum, donated $300,000 across the three coalition partners. This is the group that tried to sue to overturn the oil and gas ban when it first came into play, and being Taranaki-based, not Greymouth, which is kind of weird, they have nothing to do with Greymouth, but they should go down and visit the library there. It's beautiful, it's new, it's very flash. Anyway, it's a Taranaki-based isolationist natural gas extractor. So the new LNG terminal is going to create a floor in prices for LNG that's suddenly based on the higher international pricing for the product. So they could start creaming it even more than they do now if that goes ahead. Property developer Michael Grant Sullivan donated $200,000 over the three coalition partners, and while the construction sector itself was fucked over more than any other in those record business liquidation numbers that we've seen, proposals to let councils opt out of density requirements in favour of greenfield development is actually a direct benefit to large-scale land developers like Sullivan, or real estate groups like Barfoot and Thompson, the founder of which donated $50,000 to National. Nick Mowbray, the founder of Zuru Toys, gave $200,000 to ACT, and ACT likes low taxes. You know, one of the reasons that Mowbray took his production offshore to China. They like to weaken employment law. Another reason he went to China. They like to weaken the unions. Again, power, lower taxes, corporate tax rates, harsher immigration rules, all issues that Mowbray has actually tweeted about. In between complaining that the president was putting tariffs on his products because they're coming from China, but he supports the president, he thought it was the best possible option. The former head of the Free Speech Union and now head of a charter school that preaches the dog whistle term of Western cultural values in a charter school worked with ACT to raise funds and then donate said funds of $32,000 to ACT. And here's the thing, we're meant to believe these are all just donations because the mega rich have plenty to gain by supporting the status quo before even looking at what they get specifically out of the re-election of the coalition. And they're just really concerned about change, and they want us to avoid the trauma of changing things. And of course, we don't have explicit evidence that there's been secret conversations or meetings with notes that show that there was offers made, implied or suggested in return for the more than $1 million in donations over $20,000 that have been made this year to the coalition parties. And without that explicit conversation happening on record, legally we cannot say pay for play has happened. But that doesn't mean we can't ask questions about why the mega wealthy would be so keen to ensure the continuation of a coalition so ready to lie to the general public and so bad for the rest of us that they've driven up the cost of living, driven away Kiwis for greener pastures, driven out jobs to see the highest number of unemployed people ever, and drive a wedge into the systems to keep the boots on the neck of the poor and those needing help from our beneficiary systems and those on low incomes. But there is some good news. There is one area in politics that the richest arseholes in the country have exactly the same level of power as you and I, and that's in our vote. Sure, the money that they're just giving away would be life-changing for so many, and is instead going to be spent on flashy Facebook ads and trying to make Christopher Luxon look relatable on TikTok and Winston look not over 80 on reality check radio. But at the end of the day, those people still only have the same number of votes that we do. And we outnumber the millionaires. But to have that impact, you need to be enrolled, because we're now 6 months away from the election, and the richest, worst people in the country are really keen to make sure nothing happens. And if you're not enrolled to vote before you go in to vote, you don't get to have your say, and they win. Oh, hey there, podcast listeners. Thanks for checking out today's podcast, whether that's on video or audio. I really appreciate it. And I did finally get around to doing a podcast end tag, which I've been meaning to do for a while instead of just taking you onto the Facebook version. So while you're here, why not hit that subscribe button so that you can get updates coming in directly every time there's a new episode uploaded. Just seems like a really simple way to keep up to date with all of the crazy that's going on. So yeah, give that a shot, and I'll talk to you soon.